Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome back for those of you who were here yesterday. Yesterday we had a fantastic day where we had this a really good collection of this research that's going on at the third level or PhD level in interior architecture. And today is a little bit of a different form. So we don't have these short lectures today, but we have 4 lectures about the projects that the ECIA have been working on over the last 3 years, and Sophia will talk about that. So I can just say a little bit about the plan for today. We've made some slight changes in the timetable so everybody gets enough time. And that means the break is at 11. So I know yesterday we went a little bit too long without breaks, but you just should know now we won't go more than an hour and a half before we have our first break. And then we aim to be finished. Martin will kind of sum up the day, and we'll be finished by 12:30. And at 12:30, lunch is in a place called Oslo Street Food, and it's self-organizing. And from Oslo Street Food, I just have to check with Raga if will they be collected, or do they go straight to the first sightseeing place, those of people that register for sightseeing? Yeah, so street food. Yeah. Super good, yeah. So I can write, I think I'll just find somewhere to write the address of the first sightseeing place, and you can really look forward to it. It's unfortunately well overbooked, so it's only the international visitors that have the first priority for the sightseeing. And the members that are not located here in Oslo. Yeah, good. And then in the evening we have the award ceremony in Faxen Bar, and we hope as many people as possible come to that in the evening. So that's the plan for today. Sophia, if you can, Sophia Green from the ECIA will say something about our EU project. Yeah.
Can you hear me? Everybody hears me? Okay, perfect. Let's sit down to make it more cozy. So, the BCSP project. Maybe, 2 minutes about me. My name is Sophie Green. I'm a practicing interior architect from Germany, and I'm registered for Germany, but I live in Belgium, so it's already quite an international context. I was asked from the Federal Chamber of Architects in Germany if I wouldn't like to join ECIA and represent Germany for them. So when in 2019 a board position opened, I applied for it. I was elected in Bilbao, and that's when it all started. So before that, I had no clue about ECIA, neither about professional organizations, neither about what all this work would imply. And I also didn't know that it's different. Our profession is different all across Europe. So I didn't know that they were educators. I didn't know how it is organized. So in Bilbao in September 2019, I also learned about the spider model study, and I also learned that ECIA is not a that big organization and doesn't have that big budgets, and that a spider model study will cost some money. And we were kind of asking ourselves, like, where can that money come from? So with that idea or this issue in mind, I went back from Bilbao, and a fun fact maybe, I was actually sitting in the plane with Ursula von der Leyen. But that was a coincidence, it was not planned, but she was sitting like 2 rows behind me on my plane back from Bilbao to Brussels. And so I was thinking, and then I thought, oh, okay, hold on, there's European funding, like how do other organizations do that? And I had no clue about that. And then I remembered that my first renovation project in Brussels, it was an Italian guy. I did an apartment for him. And I remembered he worked for Creative Europe. So in November, I called Pietro and asked, like, can you explain this whole thing to me? How does this work, So I went and saw him, and he explained to me that there's different strands of funding for networks or only for projects, so you can apply. And as the European Commission likes administrative procedure and loads of paperwork, these are all very complex things. So then it was Paris, our Paris board meeting in January 2020, and we I informed the board about the idea of like applying for funding. They were kind of up for it, and but then COVID happened. So Corona happened, everything went online, but because we already had decided as a board that we would do that, we looked for consultants that could help us fill out all these papers. And we were waiting for the call to come out because the COVID, so European funding happens for 7 years, like a budget gets approved for 7 years and it gets split into 2 times 2 years. And so we were waiting for this call to come out so we could apply for it, but so, you know, because of Corona, everything took longer. So finally, the call came out for the budget of 21 to 27, and it was called Creative Europe Pushing Boundaries. So we applied for that. We got the consultants. It was like, we had these ideas, you know, it was Luz and I, we had like this, we need money, you know, we want to apply, and then the consultants kept coming with, well, they are asking for work packages in this application, so what are your work packages? What are your deliverables? What are your KPIs? So we're like, we have a plan, you know, we want to grow our profession, we want to have everybody know about us, and we want to like connect, but like we did not understand, you know, that you had to kind of, so it was very useful to have these consultants that kind of pulled everything out of you, you know, and then we were filling these work packages, and then we were like, oh, work package knowledge exchange? What the heck should we do knowledge exchange? Okay, let's suggest training carousels, you know, like everybody could like do a carousel. So it was kind of a bit of filling the gaps, trying it out, doing things in a designingly way. And yes, so our plan was approved, and we were very surprised because we did not know that this would actually happen. And so, because this, for ECIA, this was the first, so we had to ask the General Assembly if we can like go for this. And then the General Assembly, they said, yeah, okay, let's go for it. And the Commission was actually surprised that they said, okay, let's go. And we said, oh no, we cannot go yet because we have to get approval. So they were a bit like surprised that things were taking longer than they had hoped. Anyway, we had these 6 work packages, we had a budget. Fun fact about the spider model study, the budget, we had a couple quotes of 20,000, 30,000 euros in Bilbao for a spider model study, which was not as big as what we in the end ended up doing. And it was during the application process, you have to come up with a budget. And I remember calling Dominic or sending him a text message, how much money do you need for a really, really big study? And back came like 100K would be good. So we put 100K in, like we kind of split it a bit over other work packages, so to kind of not just pay a study. Yeah, so I'm somebody who likes ideas. I like systems. I like big dreaming big, but I'm not somebody that can really well execute these things. You know, I can keep on track, but I need there needs to be people, you know, that actually do the thing and that are detail oriented. And Luz did a brilliant job in not only in this application, but she's the one that actually keeps the connection to the Commission, you know, uploading the deliverables, making sure that we're on time. And then Dominic was brilliant. He was the one that, once we had this he took these work packages and restructured it, you know, said, okay, this is our organigram. We're gonna have these processes to get like our bills approved and to make sure like everybody's in the loop, and this is how we're gonna work. And these work packages were then reorganized into these sub-projects, which made them more handable as well and more aligned with the kind of people we also had. You know, we had Jeremy to do the Carta. He was already working on the Carta, and together with René, so it was obviously that he has to deal with this. And we knew Graham was like really good in doing knowledge exchange, so we have to put him on that. He then created this monster of Atlas he's going to talk about afterwards. So we sometimes had a bit of problem keeping our sub-project leaders in line, you know, because if you have these over-motivated volunteers, you know, they like get really excited about this thing. Like Jeremy made a whole conference out of actually a Kata conference that was just meant to be like promoting the Kata at a couple universities. We're sitting here like 2 days in Oslo, like that was not the plan, but it's really cool, you know? So this is also, and so it happens. I mean, there's like hiccups, there's like things get bigger, things get greater, and it's just absolutely amazing what came out of these 3 years of, which actually just started like, okay, let's fill out some forms and try to find some money. So long story short, we tried to apply for a second round. We had enough points to actually get money, but other ones had more points, so they got the money, which is it's okay, because it gives ECIA also the time to breathe, to readjust, to digest all these things that have been created, and then the next board can also take a decision to say, okay, our priorities are here or there. So the rest of the day, or like this morning, as Jeremy said, will be about the different results of some of the sub-projects. Els is going to talk about the market research, so it has the running name Spider Model Study, but it's actually the research about the situation of the profession across Europe. I still think we have to, because it's like 140 pages, something like that, and I think we still have to kind of get it into some digestible bits, you know, that we can easy for normal people to understand or to like get. We have knowledge exchange. Miriam and Graham are going to talk about that. It's what turned out to be training carousels. We had training carousels, but we had also this atlas, which is exciting. Growing the network, Marianne, who did an absolutely brilliant job, because when we started the project, ECIA, I think, had 14 member countries. Now we have 20. So she like took her sub-project and she just ran with it and delivered and done. So really good. And then we have the Interior Award, which is happening tonight. And we are very, very happy that it came together. It was a bit of a bumpy ride, but what is easy is boring, no? So, yeah, BCSP, building on connections for a stronger profession. I think that is what we did. We choose this acronym on purpose, so to make everybody trip across it, like for the last 3 years. I think we did exactly that. We built on our connections and we made the profession stronger. So I'll give off the mic and let Els continue.
Yes.
Can you introduce yourself?
Okay. Yes, the mic is working. Hello, I'm Else Vos from the University of Antwerp. And I should also mention Inge Somers, who was there also at the beginning when we had the meeting with Dominique, with Sophie. Louis was there too, I think. So that were the first persons we met. And we were very lucky that we had the opportunity to do this research. Inge already did a PhD. I will come back on that, on the identity of interior architecture broadly. And I had running a history project on the identity of interior education. And so this expertise helped us to fulfill this project. So, and I'm very happy that I can present now the results and make them a bit more digestible. As indeed, it's a scientific report. And yeah, I will come back on that. I need a pointer. Yes.
It's upside down.
Yes, okay, so this is the report, how it looks like. And actually the researcher was Louis de Bersac. He's a historian, and he worked together in the office with Sam van Hey, who made a PhD on the interior history education, and so they learned a lot from each other. Sam knew about the practice, and Louis was the one who knew historically how to deal with it, and those two, that went well together. And it was supervised, well, on the one hand, Inge Somers, who was the initiator of this research project, and then myself, who followed up the whole research process and also afterwards. Louis is now doing a research as a PhD student, so he went his own way. And as objective, we defined mapping the professionalization of the interior architecture discipline in Europe. And we gathered data between May 22 and September 23. So a full year, Louis worked on that project. And indeed, the ideas were already launched in 2017. Then there was a pre-study with spider models. And the spider, you had several legs: education, professionalization, and legislation. And so the idea was we have to extend that project. First, we did a sub-project in 21. Ilse Lindenberg worked on that together with Inge Somers and my colleague Marianne Michels. And at that time, we had 16 members then, it was in 2002, who were there. These members had, of course, a professional organization. That's how they became member. So, like Portugal is absent as we didn't find a professional organization. And so we were in contact with all these organizations. So some are professional organizations and some are registers. Like the Netherlands is represented by 2 organizations, the BNE and the Architecture Register. And that's also the case for some other countries. Those 3 new members are still not in the study, but anyhow, I wanted to mention them. So it's Britain, Poland, and Bulgaria, who also joined later. So our question was, what is the degree of professionalization of interior architecture between countries? As we had the hypothesis that a higher professionalization leads to higher recognition of interior architecture. And the first question, of course, what is interior architecture? And Inge referred already yesterday to the work of Ellen Klingenberg. Is she still here today? Yes, okay, so it was very inspirational and it remained inspirational, as in the bunch of literature, it was very helpful to understand that you have several fields of interior architecture. So you had the education, you had the practice, both are in interaction with each other, but both also help to build the body of knowledge. And now, more recently, since Bologna, you have much more research on interior architecture education, and it also became a young academic discipline. So all the fields are growing. And that is also important if we look to the definition of professionalization, and we use the one of Grace Lees-Maffei, who's a professor at University of Hertfordshire, where she said professionalization can be defined as a process of developing an activity into general recognized profession through the setting up of educational institutions, professional organizations, check, articulation of the codes of conduct, but also the enforceability of that, so that you can take sanctions if they are not followed, educational rules of assessment, and networking and gatekeeping. So that were the 5 levels that you can see. There are other definitions and other scholars as well, but we worked with that one as she made. She wrote a big article on professionalization in interior design. That was a very seminal article. And we divided then the research question in 3 sub-questions, like, okay, how is it the discipline organized by education, professional organization, and legislation? And thus, higher professionalization leads to higher recognition of interior architecture. The research started with desk research, screening of websites, literature study, studying the previous studies, but also we received a lot of documents from all kinds of organizations to understand the state of the art in the countries. Then we did a questionnaire. The questionnaire we sent to representatives from education, professional organizations, and the practice. And it was with questions on these 3 things. And what was new in comparison with the first spider model is that we also look to gender and diversity. For Europe, it's also a very important aspect, and it's very relevant in interior design as well, as I will show. And then we did focus groups with each country, all the countries who wanted to participate. And that was to verify and nuance data, to contextualize the data, to mediate between education and organizations. And we noticed that in many cases, it was the first time that these institutes talk together with each other. So that was really nice. Sometimes they were never in contact. Like also in Belgium, we had the Flemish-speaking and French-speaking schools who talked together and so on. So that was very enriching. But I have to do a disclaimer, it's a one-year study, so you see that a lot of material is gathered, but we still need processing them more. And also the situation is changing constantly. They're coming, the development of new courses and so on. So it's a field in development. And secondly, we had added research, so we had parallel a 4-year project by the Flemish Research Institute, FVO, and it was on the emergence of interior architecture in Belgium, 1945-1999, on which it was together with Freddy Fleury from the KU Leuven, and 2 researchers, Benoît van de Voort and Sam van Hee, worked on that project. And Belgium was especially interesting because it's very complex, it's very dense, it's in the heart of Europe, it has 2 language regions, and it has also 2 networks. You have a Catholic network of schools and you have a state-funded network of schools, so they are very different. We have one that is organized like the Bauhaus by Henri van de Velde, which also has its own ideology. Some are more related to product design, other more to architecture, other more to furniture and craft. So we had a very richness there, and it helped us to understand also how the situation was in other countries. Then the report, we built it up in 4 chapters. One was general recognition of difficulties and barriers to professionalization. Then we had the spider model analysis itself, and then on awareness and stigma, gender diversity and inclusion. And then we end up with some concluding remarks. And so the general recognition difficulties and barriers to professionalization, and many of them were already mentioned yesterday, the terminological obscurity, the disciplinary in-betweenness, and the general recognition issues. And if we look, well, we are in Norway, so I thought let's start with the book Interior Architecture of Ellen Klingenberger, which the title Interior Architecture is used. And for example, in some countries like Torsten Hild, he said, I think it's correct to say that we only use interior architects in Sweden, for example. But if we had a list of all the terminology we saw in French, then you had architecte intérieur, like in Luxembourg, Switzerland, France, inner architect in Germany, interieur architectuur in the Netherlands, Belgium, Raumplanner in Liechtenstein, so it's spatial planner, you can say, so, and decorador in Spain, so you had a very variety of terms. And also, if you look to the books, scientific books, we see a struggle, I can say. The first was called Interior Design Basics, but then later editions talk about basics interior architecture. And then it was very clever, I think, that it was the Handbook of Interior Architecture and Design. Then both are included. And you see that now coming that is mostly used, interior architecture and design. And yeah, then there is for example, some say we use the term interior design, not interior architecture. So in Susanna Tonichova from Slovakia says we use interior design. Why, for example, Carola Ebert say in Germany we have interior architecture and then we have interior decoration, which is a professional training, and in the middle we don't have interior design. So. And then Thierry Conquet from France said interior design doesn't exist. So it's very interesting to see how they talk about it. But if we make a map, we see that interior architecture is mostly used in Europe, at least the member states we could investigate. especially Scandinavian and Central Europe. It's interior architecture. In the southern countries and also Slovakia, so former, or Eastern Europe, we see that interior design is used. And we see also a hierarchy in these terms, and I will come back on that. I think you all know, but anyhow, interior architecture, it's mostly said it's spatial, it has to deal with structure elements. Others say that interior decoration, it's the curtains and cushions, and interior design would be something in between, although it's also sometimes used as an umbrella term which contains everything, interior architecture as well as interior design. And then we see furniture design popping up also in the terminology, so that has a special status, I would say. And to make it even more complex, because we made an overview of the countries, but if we go to even the same university, like in Italy, at the Polymi of Milan, and it was already said yesterday as well, they have two terms at different campuses. So at the campus Leonardi, they use the term interior architecture as a kind of specialization at the Department of Architecture and Urban Studies, and they also have PhDs there in interior architecture, they told us. And at the campus Bovisa, of which we heard yesterday a talk, it's interior design at the School of Design and interior and spatial design at the School of Design. So also there are two terms for something at the same campus, and I will come back on that later. But there is a hierarchy with interior architecture. It's mostly the longer program with focus on architectonic elements and of a structure. Then interior design is mostly the shorter, more professional training, like in Belgium, interior architecture is academic, interior design is a more professional bachelor. And then decoration, well, it is often seen as amateuristic, although for a long time in the French-speaking regions, it has a kind of prestige, les décorateurs en France. And for example, in French-speaking Belgium, the term ensemble décorateur was for a long time used until the 70s or even 80s. And then in Spain, decorador is still used and is protected as title. So it's there a 3-year bachelor program. Why interior diseñador, which also exists, it's a 4-year bachelor years program, but the title is not protected. So decorador is more protected than interior designer. So you see all kinds of unclear situations. And even in one and the same institute, you see different names between bachelor and master programs. So in Norway, University of Bergen, Faculty of Design, they have a 3-year bachelor interior architecture and furniture design, but then it's followed by a 2-year master called design, which is broader. Also Oslo National Academy of Art, furniture design, space design and interior design as bachelor program and a master in design. And then here in Christiania, a 3-year bachelor in interior architecture and a 2-year master in applied arts. So while we rather have specializations to interior design, we see that here in Norway, they do the opposite. They start more specialized and they end more in a design master, which is also fascinating how you look at these programs and the evolution of these programs. And yet the hierarchy in the terms is visible, and there are strategies to deal with it, like Susanna van Eyben of Gothenburg. She said, I've started a few years ago to say that I'm an architect, interior architect, just to pronounce what education I have and that they don't put me into some kind of decorator. So there it's status. And then Thor Lindstrand from Konstfag, he said, the master program is spatial design, interior architecture and furniture design are part of that, but I would say historically, interior architecture and furniture design has belonged to the realm of architecture. So that's in the Scandinavian countries clearly the trend, it's part of architecture. But there's no consensus on that. If we go to Austria, for example, there Christoph Schmidt-Ginsky, he said, for me, interior architecture has not to deal with structure. And this is how we teach it at school. Yes, we don't touch a structure and their formation they have no knowledge about how to deal with the structure. Interior architecture, room design, and object design means you're dealing on one side with space and on one side with design. So, and of course, there was some discussion on the terms, but then Christian Armstrong from Austria, he mainly stressed the point that there is also misuse due to lack of legal protection of the title. There are also in my area carpenters or other persons. They also call themselves interior architects, and this is not right. So that you also see people call themselves interior architects without having the education or the diploma for it. So besides the nomenclature, you have then the disciplinary in-betweenness. Where does the interior architect belong? In a chain of expertise, it's often architect, civil engineer, contractor, constructor, and the interior architect is the kind of advisor, but not really sometimes the expert. So where is its place? And then you have conflicting building regulations. The regulation, it was very complex. In some countries like Germany, it's even different in every region. Also Switzerland, Belgium. So it's clearly that sometimes it's in very few instances interior architects can sign building permits. In the most cases, they don't, but also there is no clear one rule. And then the third barrier to professionalization is the recognition amongst each other, but also the recognition of the public and other disciplines. And there it was, okay, with ECIA and with the professional organizations, it's a very important way to increase the recognition. And you see also in the statistics that the majority of the organizations grew, so the members grow. But there were discussions, okay, what are the entrance criteria to enter these organizations? More members. But then we have to accept more members who have maybe less education or are also architects. Should we go for the big amount, or should we go for the expertise and say we want that they have a higher degree to be accepted? And so it's a sport with two sides. And so you see the recognition sometimes. It's to be able to define yourself. We see that the national size is important to be visible or not. Of course, large countries have more members. Small countries often have it harder to exist. Although we also saw that young professional organizations like Slovakia and Malta, they are very well organized. They use modern technologies to communicate, and so they are able to make visible in a short time the profession and the discipline. And in Italy, they have a rich discipline, so it's a bit easier to be visible and to be there. Interdisciplinary recognition, we saw that Germany and Slovakia especially aim for an own chamber of design instead of being part of the chamber of architecture. But while in Sweden, they are quite happy to be part of the Swedish architectures, so it depends also there. And in Belgium, Wim van der Vurst, the head of the interior program in Ghent and Brussels, he said, if you look at, for example, competitions, they always ask for structural engineers, landscape architects, but they seldomly ask for an interior architect. So within architecture, interior architecture isn't perceived as an additional quality within the team. So he pleads that interior architects are included also in competitions, that they are more visible. And then the public recognition there, several people said, like, for example, Lars Reiner from Finland, stereotypes are stiff and stick very well on the depiction of them in television programs. But Kees Spanjers, on the other hand, said, after women fashion, interior architects is, I think, the most described and shown subject on television. So we are also on everyone's tongue, and you should have to take advantage of that. You shouldn't see that as a threat. So that's the question. Is it good or not good, all those programs, and what's with the recognition then? So that were the barriers. Then the spider model itself. So we did a questionnaire, and in the questionnaire there were several categories. And if something was present, it got a 1, like education, bachelor, 3 years. If it was present to a certain extent, it was a half. For example, with PhDs, we saw PhDs in interior design were often not there, but there were kind of artistic PhDs that were not called PhDs yet. So then we gave a half, and 0 was when it was absent. And then we did it for the 3 fields: education, professional organizations, and legislation. I will go deeper now into the education, but all the fields were investigated. So we made accesses with all these binary systems. And then one of the things we noticed is there is a variety of educational routes to interior design. For example, to come back on the campus in Bovisa in Milano, the interior designer, it prepares a technician able to design private or public interiors, while the mission statement of interior and spatial design, there it's training high-skilled professionals who are able to critically deal with new interior spaces, design of urban interiors and ephemeral spaces, etc. So there are several routes. And INB, the Belgian organization, made a very clear scheme on the routes in Flanders. So you see, for interior architecture, you have the academic bachelor interior architecture program. That's a 3-year academic bachelor, and then it's followed by a 1-year academic master. And it's followed at universities. While there also exists a professional 3-year bachelor interior design, which has no research but is more practice-based, and this is given at university colleges, and they are 3-year, then they are interior designer, but they can do a kind of chain year, preparation year to enter then a master of interior architecture and also to become an interior architecture. So there are literally 2 different routes to the degree of a master in interior architecture. But at the Flemish side, at the French side, the PhD of Sam van Hee, he showed that there it are schools of arts, so it's not academic or professional bachelor and master, but it's School of Arts, and it's a 5-year program. So it's 1 year longer than Flanders, but it doesn't have a PhD program because there is no research in it, while the 4-year program in Flanders can give access to a PhD. So that's different. And also in the Francophone speaking part of Belgium, you have Architecture d'Intérieur and you have Création d'Intérieur. And this is a part-time program. So there are also other routes to be a more interior creator. And then there are different types of institutes. So if we look to the scheme, it's only in 7 countries that interior architecture is given at a university. So not that if you would have architecture, there would be much more. And there are several kind of institutes, so it's a very big variety. You have a University of Applied Sciences, Academy of Fine Arts, Academy of Applied Arts, university colleges, vocational and other schools. So there's a big variety. And only 7 at a university, but then it's quite peculiar that the diplomas, they are almost all given in the arts. So for example, in Germany, and Carola said it yesterday already, you have their bachelor and master in arts, although in Berlin, it is a bachelor, it's the Berlin International University of Applied Sciences. So it's sciences, but it leads to a diploma in the arts. So it's completely unclear. And in that mode, it's a bachelor. It's also Bachelor of Arts, but they are called Hochschule in Applied. It's their Applied Arts and Sciences. So they have both. And so if you put these 2 schemes together, then you see, like in Germany, it's a University of Applied Science, but it leads to a diploma in the arts. Also Sweden and Norway, it's sometimes given at university, but also there it leads to a diploma in the arts and not in science, although it's given at university. So there is something strange about it. And then about the amount of years, so mostly it is a 3-year bachelor program, although some, like Estonia, Netherlands, I thought Germany as well, no, not Germany, it's a 4-year bachelor, and the master is mostly 2 years, although in some cases it's 1-year master program. And then about lifelong learning possibilities, that was something that we saw. There were not that many institutes that gave continuous professional development possibilities. A lot were having plans on it. Like, for example, the Norwegian NIL and the Swiss organization, they are setting up lifelong learning platforms. And in Italy, they are making steps to make it mandatory. But we saw that currently it's only mandatory in countries where the title is legally protected, like, for example, in the Netherlands. And the courses then are also often offered by the architects organization or the registry of architects. So it's connected to architecture where it's obliged in most of the cases. And so if the title is recognized, then there is a high chance that also they have to follow courses, and these are mandatory. Then PhD possibilities. We saw there were not many countries which had PhD possibilities, at least in the traditional sense of the word. So in Belgium you have them, and only in Flanders. In Spain and Sweden, that's how we found. But many were working with artistic PhD or research-based, research by design PhD. And for example, it was planned, and maybe in the meantime it's there. I don't know how it is the current situation. Like in Norway, here in Christiania School, there were plans to make the artistic PhD into a real PhD. In Sweden at Konstfach, they had these plans. In Austria, there is a private university in the EU which will set up a PhD program. And in France, it's École Camondo, a private school, who is setting up a PhD program. Of course, when it's in a private institution, it's, I guess, harder to get public funding for research. So when it's in a public institution, like in Belgium, you can apply to the funding, the national funding organization for PhDs, and then that's a way to get funding for PhDs. The PhD's possibilities, it was clear that it's a road to professionalization and to academization of the program. It helps to develop the body of knowledge, and I show here some, like the one of Inge Somers, who really developed the field of interior design. I think it's a very important one for the development of the field. Another one was defended in February by Tide Poot, who did a research on public interiors and who sought for design strategies to not look from an urbanistic point of view, but from an interior design point of view to urban interiors. And the jury appreciated that she had a clear mission. The mission was to bring interior design on the map, on the agenda, and look to space through that lens. And then recently the two PhDs on the history of education, which helped to understand how the discipline was in the past, to understand the complexity in the present. Then there are internship options that was also investigated. That's important. In Italy, for example, there are a lot of internship possibilities, which is important for the discipline, the schools, and so on. We saw that only in vocational institutions, an internship, practice-based oriented internship is obligatory. And for example, in Switzerland and Austria, 80% is on practice I think it's in a master program. And then do professional organizations allow members based on education or on experience in the practice? And it's often a balance between those two. Then the practice and the legislation were done. And then we came to our spiders. So now each country has a spider. And for example, Germany has a big triangle, which means that education in years, practice and legislation and the professional organization are well regulated, well organized, and so on. And so you can see for each country what is strongly developed. This is then in geographically, you have an overview. And that leads to certain maps where you see Germany is everywhere very strong in regulation and visibility. The Norwegian countries are less regulated, but they have, I think, another interesting approach of design. It's also if the membership requirements are set and ethical guidelines are set in professional organizations, the status of the profession is also often stronger. So we see for Germany, for Finland, Netherlands. And then the gender diversity and inclusion. And there it was very interesting when we asked the question, often the answer was something like, I think for interior or for design or for some other project, it is not important if she or he is behind. So that was in the thing of Slovakia. But then actually it was very funny. And then I said, oh, but if I look to the members of the focus group, I only see one woman. All the other are men. And then they changed the camera and you see it at the right. And suddenly one woman appeared. It was at the end of the interview. She hadn't said anything so far. And said, oh, we have another woman. And so the woman was literally invisible. If I hadn't asked about gender, we wouldn't have seen her. And then indeed, if you look to the statistics, yes, among the students, 90% in European countries are women. It's very high. It was not so in the past, not in the 60s, 70s, but it's in the present like that. But if you go to the teachers and the positions in organizations, you see mostly male-dominated. So that's an eye-opener to see that. And there was also interesting, like in Slovakia, then Milan said, it's interesting to find out, and he found out there are many women students in, for example, the University of Zwolle, but he asked the students about it, and the men, they went to study abroad in Prague or Brno. It seemed that they they had a drive to go abroad, and the women stayed at home. So the cliches about who is going abroad, it's also there apparently. And we see then some said it's very hard, the profession. It's not just a desk job. Some like Tove of Sweden talked about more burnouts. They must prove themselves twice as much, said Martin Thornblom from Austria. But Thorsten Hilt was positive and said, when there is a women engineer, it's much better actually, that's my experience. Masculine ways do always define the hierarchy all times, who's above who has the most power. You waste a lot of time when you should be doing things instead of playing with the social structures. So some said when a woman, it's much nicer to work or easier to work. We saw in practice the leaky pipeline is still there, many barriers, the glass ceiling or plafond de verre, they called it in the French focus group. One of the striking things, and in Belgium it was said the most obstructive thing is the bad organization of maternity leave. In most European countries it's 15 weeks, Switzerland 14, but for example Norway and the Scandinavian countries 1.5, 1 year, 1.5 year, and even Slovakia 3 years. So it's a big difference. And also in Norway they make sure that also fathers take up the parental leave or they lose part of it. They also ensure that they have their place back. So there is a lot to do on that, and it's also in other professions like architecture and so on, independent jobs. But we have the impression that there are less barriers for women in Northern European and former East countries or East European countries, although that still has to be investigated. We don't have that much countries that investigated there. The stereotypes are there and the confusion with household or everybody can do it, can decorate his or her home. We said already that. And then we also should be aware of a paradox. On the one hand, there is an abundance of regulation and some said the regulations are obstructing us. And on the other hand, some said there are not enough. And then apparently the abundance of regulation is about restricting people. You only may do this and this. And the lack of regulation, it's often to acknowledge the expertise and the competences and to define them. So it's different kind of regulations that should be built. Then there are 10 obstacles to the profession, but you can read them. I will not explain them all, but it's good to know. And the majority I said already. I think it's more interesting to see some good practices for inspiration in education. We saw Italy in its program is very inspirational. The lifelong learning possibilities that are mandatory in the Netherlands, the PhD setup in Belgium, the plan to set up the PhD in some countries, the secondary vocational possibilities in Austria. Then for organization, in Switzerland, they have an own archive for interior architects that's very unique in Europe. Also the brainstorming about the creation of a chamber of design as counterbalance to the Chamber of Interior Architects in Slovakia. Successful interdisciplinary work, the non-umbrella in Norway, the NIL, and also in Finland, the Netherlands and Germany. The mandatory, that's the mandatory registration, I'm sorry, in Netherlands and Germany, and and the mandatory registration in Spain. For legislation, the legal title protection, Netherlands, Germany, Iceland, and Italy, recent definition recognition by the government. And Germany, the question how to deal with the abundance of regulation, so what to do with it. And in Finland, the layered building permits. In general, there is an awareness and influence of stigmatization in Sweden and Finland. And in Estonia, they know the importance of English communication to have more international exchange. We see education, it's an important pillar to the professionalization. There is a big diversity in design programs, as I explained. The question is there a need for homogenization, or is it a richness to have all these programs? Do we go for delineation, Germany, but especially the US approach, or fluidity, the Scandinavian or the Australian approach? Lifelong learning as an opportunity for all the professional organizations, the importance to develop PhD research, and the importance of gender. Recommendations is a label of quality for interior designers, appropriate English communication, clear terminology, construct debate by revisiting health, safety, and welfare, which can be a key, and curricular reforms in which you have a balance between theory and internship and curriculum diversity. And to show, I think the in-betweenness nature of interior architecture should not be seen as an inherent curse, but rather as an opportunity that came out of many of the things. And to show that, I want to show one of the results of that 4-year FAO project as well, as interior design was completely invisible in history books on architecture. Contemporary architecture only mentions one interior duo, or Belgian furniture history, also invisible. Also in the source books of archives, it was invisible. You had one on architecture, one on design. Why we made then a source guide, interior design, Belgium 45-2000. And for the first time, interior design was seen as an interest with all the education, with all the designers. And so suddenly it became clear there was a whole field that was literally invisible in archives. So thank you. And to stimulate research, I want to end with a call for papers that was already launched on IDEC, and that is on the impact of digital technologies on interior architecture. I will also send it then to ECIA to spread it. As I think we had a lot of submissions already from the American scholars, as it was launched there, but we think Europe should be visible as well, and so that's the call. Thank you.
It was extremely interesting, and it's really a lot that we can work with in Norway, at least. It's really inspiring to see how we're organised and how confused we are about what we're called, but at the same time we all know exactly what we do. So I can notice this really like coherence in us, our understanding of ourselves, and a kind of a little bit of confusion about the way we are kind of understood out from the outside. So it's really inspiring. Thanks a lot, and certainly like lots we can do, particularly in this kind of international forum. So thanks, it was a fantastic lecture. Now it's Graham and Yeah, we're so short of time. Could, so if we open for question, and if I can just say on to the online, the people online, could you write your questions in the chat, and we'll take them at least with the post-conference package, so we can gather up the questions. We can't necessarily answer them because of time. So if you have a question you're online, write it in the chat, and we can send it to us afterwards. And if you have a question here from the audience to us, we can just use a couple of minutes now before Graham and Miriam, while they're setting up. So, are there any questions? Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Els. I think it's a great work to compare all these different aspects in the European countries. And you also already said in Germany we even have 16 more countries, so it's very difficult. But one question: do you have the opportunity to continue, because when I see that at universities or University of Applied Sciences, a lot of things are changing all the time. So is there how do you go on with this research in a way, or did you find, I know it's all about money, but is there an idea about that?
Yes, it's indeed about money. That's crucial to find the structural time. We can take some time to grasp and to look deeper into it, but actually it should become a kind of continuous. There should be kind of the idea. Actually, the initial idea was we make a kind of website, but then we need another expertise. We make a kind of website where we put the data we have, and every country can follow it up, and so the data grow organically. And in theory, it's very nice, but I think it's hard to do also in practice. You need web designers then, and it seems easy, but if I look to other initiatives, I think about the Komomo, they document modernist buildings, for example, and people could upload on Google Maps buildings, and suddenly Google appropriates them and you have to pay for it, and all the efforts are gone. So it would be nice, and I think we need an extra project. So as I say, let's do it with ECIA. It would be very nice that we could do. I think it's relevant, but it's not that easy. So it needs money, because if you want to do it properly, you really need people who can put time in it. Yes.
I think we should go on now. Well, at the end of the next session, we can have a quick questions thing, and we'll try and use this box. So this is a microphone that you can throw to each other. So it's our last experiment in technical presentation. So we'll try it at the end of the next one. Yeah. So put that, if you turn that.
Ready to go?
Yeah. So I don't think I need to introduce you, but you're going to talk about knowledge exchange and this enormous project you've started. So you're up.
Thank you.
Miriam Dreyer and Graham Brooker. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think you're both turned on.
I'm Graham Brooker. This is great to see you. This is BCSP sub-project 3, Knowledge Exchange.
Hello, hello. Aha.
Next button. Are you on buttons or shall I?
Yeah, I'm on buttons.
So
we're launching the grand and one and only Atlas Archive. Woo! So this is really a celebration of the work that we've all collectively put in, and Graham is going to give you a bit of an introduction into the
this
project.
is the first lecture that I have ever done where I've advocated for all of you to take your phones out, to take your laptops out and start getting onto the archive. Normally I tell my students, do not touch your phones. But we'd really like you to scan that and jump onto the archive, because this is a bit more of an interactive talk where we want you to play with the archive as we're talking. We want you to explore it and to experiment with it. And then as we go through this conversation, hopefully it'll all make sense and you can start to enjoy this production.
We'll give it a second. People still
Yeah, we'll
scanning.
leave it up for you. Can you get it?
It's possibly blocked by the firewall.
Oh no!
Oh no!
No, really?
Really?
Really? Oh, so fun. Is that everybody? Is it working? Maybe just yours. Ah, okay.
Okay.
Ah,
Because everyone's entering at
because
the
you're all
same
getting
time
onto
then.
it. Ah, okay.
Yes.
I think this happened as well in Lucerne, where
Everybody jumped on it at once.
one by one.
Yeah.
We do this in a designerly way, right?
We're going to structure this talk in a kind of simple way, hopefully. I'm going to introduce the project and talk about the background and how we got to where we are. And then I'm going to hand over to Miriam, who effectively has delivered and operated and implemented and pretty much done everything, really. In
That's
fact,
not true. It's a community project.
Miriam is the boss, and I've just been told what to do. That's how it works. So we're going to talk about the project background. I'm going to do that, and then we're going to talk about promoting the Atlas, the Exchanging Knowledge lecture series, which we did, the community characteristics. We're going to take you on a walkthrough, and then we've got things that we want to shout to you to make sure that this project carries on, it has a life. So the project background. First of all, it's not a singular effort, of course, and it's not just the pair of us. The early part of this project was that we formed a working group, many of which of the people you see here in front of you. Some are here, most are here actually. I think just one isn't. Martin's not here with us from the UK. And this was really the beginning of the project, and it was really the moment where we sat down and said, what does this damn thing called knowledge exchange mean? Because in my world, knowledge exchange is kind of something quite different to what the brief was suggesting. So anyway, so we started by really talking to people about what knowledge exchange meant for them and what we wanted to do with this project. As Sophie alluded to, I personally was, now this depends on which day of the week you're on, but I was either commissioned, coerced, press-ganged into this project in Florence in 2022, and I've ranged between those three options throughout these 3 years. There's that as well. And I was asked to undertake this project in 2022, and immediately when I received this brief, this was the brief, I said, what the hell is a carousel, for God's sake? I've got a real problem with the idea of training. Training is something you do with animals and snacks and horses, etc. We don't train people, I don't think, in this way. What is knowledge exchange and so on and so forth? So anyway, like a designer, I suppose, I said things like, this brief's rubbish, we need to rewrite the brief and so on and so forth. And really, what the key thing about this knowledge exchange idea, I think, is rather than viewing this as a kind of a training platform, which was its early incarnation, myself and the working group and Miriam and everybody, we really talked around the idea that actually knowledge exchange in its fullest sense can be this wonderful, beautiful archive. An archive which we stack full of things that we're interested in interiors, but also other disciplines, of course. But stuff which becomes, I described it often as a wiki, ECIA wiki, or a archive, repository, of all the stuff that we always need, and that can range from that planning regulation in Germany that you need to know about fire escapes and so on, ranging through to the philosophy of bathrooms, etc. So it's really, really important that this kind of huge shelf, if you like, library, archive, becomes and will become this thing that we can constantly go back to. And that's how the Atlas was born and the idea of the Atlas. It's an atlas. It's a map. It's an open source knowledge exchange, which we can all access and which we can also commit to, upload to, and so on. We'll explain that. So in the early stages, and I would really, he may even be online, I'm not sure, but I started work with a guy who was one of my students, a guy called Jesper. If you're online, Jesper, hello, and thank you. Jesper really started this with me, this journey, and really was an incredible, and still is an incredible guy. He had to withdraw from the project because he was just overwhelmed with work and so on and so forth. But I would just want to credit Jesper with some of the early kind of spidery model things, mapping things, ideas about where we can go with this. But effectively, from the start, rather than a restrictive, maybe reductive, determinist approach to training, carouseling, this was really a much more expansive, open source, which really, in my view, wants to reflect the broad, beautiful, wonderful diversity, which Elsa, I think, has alluded to as well, of this subject. Rather than closing down, always opening up, in my view, advocating and talking about this beautiful wide range of stuff that we do.
So
And now I'm going to hand over to Marielle.
thank you very much.
Please.
So for this, we came up with 2 formats, actually, because one isn't enough. The one is the Atlas Exchanging Knowledge lecture series, which is a freely accessible online series that we had on first on Zoom. Everyone could get free tickets, and then it was later uploaded to YouTube, so it's still available for anyone who's interested. And it was there to really promote the Atlas Archive and the launch that we celebrate today, and really prepare people and spread it out into the world. So get people on board on this journey with us and promote the release of the Atlas Archive every time we held a lecture. And then the second format is then obviously the very large ambition, which is the archive, which is basically an endless project that's ever growing and that really should contain all the diversity in the work that we produce in the field of interior architecture and design, which can be a lot, so a very ambitious project, but also extremely exciting and a great opportunity to work with. And so what we want to tackle with this is, first of all, this wider aim of the BCSP project, which stands for Building on Connections for a Stronger Profession, to actually, get recognition for the interior architecture discipline. So this is the broader goal that we are pursuing with this. But also historically, interior design was not considered as a political issue, and with a warming climate, this is actually really pressing for our disciplines. So we see the Atlas as a great tool to prepare ourselves and adapt to, go into more, work towards the European Green Deal, go into more circular construction modes, and so on and so forth. And then interior theory, and Carola will be really happy for this, but many others in the room as well, needs to be made more accessible now that it's emerging, and we create this rich theoretical background with all these topics. And so this is really something that the Atlas also aims to do, is to bridge this gap between the theory that's being produced and really make it reach the everyday practitioners and kind of, have it incorporated into everyday practice. And then also we observe that innovation and interdisciplinary knowledge exchange beyond interior design is often constrained by complex regulations, by tight budget, limited time, but also in some sort of competitive behavior. And so we believe that the Atlas Archive can contribute to looking into or fostering this dialogue between disciplines as well. And so our goals with the platform would be, first of all, to contribute to the professionalization, we heard it a couple of times already, of our industry, and really gain this comprehensive understanding of its impacts and potentials, increase the recognition overall, foster innovative practices and research through international networking, because if one person uploads something in country A and another person uploads something in country B, they might actually have intersections they weren't aware of. And so we create this beautiful digital network that centralizes all the expertise that exists, and we find this very, very exciting. And then also, I've mentioned it earlier, proactively prepare our interior architecture discipline for a future under the European Green Deal. So who is it for? It's for interior architecture practitioners in general. It's for scholars and academics and students. I think this is also where our starting point was. So many of the early contributors to the Atlas are actually academics. It can be for policymakers too, and the more it grows, the more it can establish into different professions. Professionals from the construction sector, perhaps, maybe there's carpenters, for example, or related crafts that might upload things of find relevant research for their projects and to contribute to the industry. And then also, of course, ECIA members and national associations. So it's a great feature from the ECIA that is now being offered, and also the potential to attract future ECIA members. I think this is really valuable for this as well. And so I've mentioned briefly the Exchanging Knowledge lecture series, which kind of builds up monthly with online events up to this grand day that we have today. And I'm just going to quickly jump through them, but it was really interesting topics, so go ahead and check it out if you have not heard of them yet. So we started off, our kickoff lecture basically was with Graham and with Silke Langenberg from ETH Zurich, and it was a nice interplay between repair and reuse, and some nice dialogue created there. Then we had the second one with Susie and Tune Kristin talking about the Practice Research PhD program, and this was also very valuable because, in fact, many of the people that zoomed in haven't heard of it before, so this was great to promote the Practice Research PhD program and tell people that it exists. Then the third one was with Ezio and with Albert on the city of proximity and speculating towards social innovation and how interior architecture can contribute to this. We had B. Plewoods and Inge Sommers with As Found, Experiments in Preservation. Then we had health and well-being with Dr. Joanna Cloy and Matthew Freeman, and this was also an interesting one because she's an environmental scientist, and she talks about toxins and which materials to choose and not to choose, which components might be healthier than others, and what to watch out for. And then the last one was the final one of the series, and it actually took place last week, with Marci Mohammadi and Anja Dirks, and it was on smart health and empathic interiors, and about this question of how can interiors develop a caring attitude towards its users.
Just to note, these are currently on YouTube, yet to go into the archive, just for the fact that we had to prioritize something else to get to the opening day today. But anyway, we'll come back to that.
Overall, I've got some numbers for you because we all love a good number. 1,683 ticketing website clicks. That means 1,683 people interested in our lectures, which is great. 488 event attendees over 6 events from 29 different countries beyond EU countries. So we also had countries such as Indonesia, for example. Yeah, it's really something to celebrate, isn't it? For this being a new format, we were overwhelmed by the interest, and it was great to see lots of people interested in all the different topics. If you are interested into the lectures, this is the link. It leads you to the YouTube ECIA account, so you can have it on your phone already and save it for later.
They will come into the archive soon, but we'll prioritize something else. That was your carousels, right there.
Thank you, Graham.
Still don't know what a carousel is. It's the thing you put in a slide projector.
So the initial idea was basically that some countries have already trainings for, like Germany, BDA has training set up for their members. And the idea was basically, okay, we just take it in turns to organize this, so one lecture gets Germany organ. One moment Germany can use one of his lectures and like.
Still not on. Still not on.
On now? No, now? Yeah. Okay, so the idea carousel, it was described as a carousel because we tried to make it just really easy and use the countries that already had lectures, and then they take it in turns, and that's how we fill in that deliverable. So we didn't really want to do really complicated things. We just said, okay, well, there's countries, like maybe Malta has a workshop set up with some local furnishing companies, and we just we spread the news and to all member organizations and let them zoom in as well. And so it's a carousel, like every country taking its turn. Now, what you made out of it is absolutely brilliant. So And we have a carousel, and we can say it's a carousel, and that way we tick the box of the deliverable, because for them they don't care what it is. They just have to have, what was described somehow there. So
All right, perfect.
I think we managed. Thank you very much.
Let's keep going.
Yeah.
We've got more. It's not over yet.
Yeah.
That's just the beginning. We've got another 3 hours yet.
What else have we done to promote the Atlas Archive besides wonderful visuals that Field Studio has provided for us, and Davina and Luz posting them on socials and distributing them literally anywhere? We've been at the ECIA General Assembly in Lucerne, so some of you might have seen us there.
I've got a medal on.
Yeah, Graham with the medal.
Who knew?
Good you mentioned this again. I don't think anyone would have known. We were also in the IT, and thank you so much for this opportunity, Petra Stefan and Carsten Viviora, for this platform to promote the Atlas Archive there. And now we
Here we are.
work towards the Substance Conference, which was lots of re-evaluating what we have, how the website can be built up, try and error, making sure buttons click correctly and all these things. So this was the work on the later stage, let's say. Yeah. But it all started with this concept idea of having a divining rod, looking for the treasures of research and knowledge, and kind of navigating your way through the expertise that's already out there, and the globe as something universal that would go well with the ECIA. And so they created this. This is also how the Atlas logo was created, to reference the divining rod and have this arrow for navigation. And then it was quite quickly, I think, that this idea developed of there's two ways of navigating to your media, desired media. There's one that's the explore page, which is more of an explorative approach of maybe getting inspiration here and there, but not really having a clear target or something that you really want to look at, but it's more getting new input in and being open to have inspiration on the Atlas.
So again, if you want to go and find your German planning regulation for fire escapes, you would go into Navigate, because you can locate that immediately. I don't even know if it's in there, but anyway, I digress. If you want
We
to
have something on
explore-
acoustics.
there you go. If you want to explore and just noodle, explore it is.
Yeah, yeah. And so these are really on the same level, so you can just toggle in between them, and they're both, I think, very valuable, having the Navigate as a goal-oriented search and the Explorer mode for more of an inspiratory search. If you haven't had the chance to go to the Atlas Archive yet, maybe this is your chance to try again. We came prepared.
We have a short film by the designers, Field Design, who are excellent design company based in Sheffield in the UK, who also have recently remodeled the ECIA website as well. And they're going to just give you a short film talking through the archive.
Can I click on it?
Do we have sound as well? No sound.
www.ecia-atlas.net, and this will also be linked on the main ECIA website shortly. The website has been designed to use two types of navigation. We've got Navigate, which will allow you to search via category, content, or country. If you click onto category, you can search through various categories, and we will display all of the artifacts that are linked to that category. You can then click on the artifact to find out more, or you can keep exploring. You can also search by content type, or you can search by country. You also have the option to filter by location, content, medium, and language. These will appear up here in the filter. Alternatively, you can search via the explore function, which is designed to be a bit more randomized. So you have the artifacts appearing here, or you can again search by country, content type, and category. The Atlas is designed to be an ever-growing community-based project. It grows with the submissions of content from all interior architects and designers, educators, researchers, specialist planners and trades, producers, representatives and policymakers across Europe and beyond. To submit an artifact, you are able to just click the plus button in the top right-hand corner. You just need to fill out a few details and then you can submit the artifact at the bottom. To flag, in order to submit an artifact, you'll need to own the copyright to the upload content, which can be an open source to your work, and also to flag that the Atlas won't be claiming ownership to any of the content submitted. Upon submission, artifacts will be reviewed and approved by the Atlas team. And finally, we do have a team of experts that have been helping us to upload content so far, which we have listed here. So these are the first experts that have submitted artifacts, but we do believe that anyone with the expert knowledge can be an expert, and we encourage anyone who wants to contribute to the Atlas.
Okay, this having said, this needs a mention because this is work in progress. Again, we mentioned it before, this is only the beginning of the Atlas Archive, and Field has been working ambitiously to set it all up for us to explore it. This Atlas Archive expert list is not complete yet, but I'll mention them in the slides.
It's worth mentioning that the artifact is effectively, imagine a flyer. Imagine an advert or a document that says, this is a précis of this piece of work, there will be artifacts which are podcasts, which are the lectures and films and so on and so forth. But effectively, this doesn't store the material. It's a filter. It's a lead. It's a kind of a pathway, a neural node for you going into this and then you finding your collection, your own archive, your own atlas. If that makes sense. We can take more questions on that if that doesn't make sense. But that gets us around the whole copyright issue. If you are asking, I'm sure people are wondering about copyright. That's how this works.
I'll also explain it in more detail in a second. What's really important for us, and this is why I stretched it in the beginning as well, is that this is a community project. This wouldn't exist without the community contributing to the Atlas, because it is carried from the community and built up for the community of interior architects and designers and within our profession. So it's really about strengthening the profession from within, and this is the beauty of the project, I believe. And so this led me to, when I got onboarded onto the project as a researcher for the Atlas Archive, into realizing throughout the process that actually it's not a matter of me finding bits and pieces and uploading them for everyone else, but to acknowledge and see that there's so much expertise, even in this room at the moment, if we look around, that is already there, and careers that have been developing over decades and really specializing in different fields. So each and every one contributes very specific, very good and high quality expert knowledge, that it was just about, connecting the dots really. And kind of, so the role of me being the researcher really became into being a coordinator of this thing and bring it together and digitalize it and just make it visible. And so we mentioned briefly that this was the closest working group. So Luz and Davina, thank you for your work. You've really helped us with the Atlas in promoting it and also taking decisions and so on. Then it was Graham and me working on it, but there was also Tune Kristin, Albert, Matthew, and Inge closely involved. And spreading the words and bringing people along on board and so on and so forth. So this was the closest working group, let's say. Then also, again, big thank you to our speakers that agreed to have lectures with us and for the Atlas Archive. And then for the wider circle, we had an open call for Atlas experts. Because, again, we believe that it needs to be carried by the community right from the start. And so for us, it was really important to get all the ECIA member associations and the different countries involved to have an equal representation and not prefer some countries over others. And so for us, it was really important to have an open call and send it out to all the different associations. If you've got annoying emails, that was me. So really to bring them all on board and make the Atlas relevant for the different countries and their respective fields and professions. And this is the outcome of the open call. We've got the first 40 contributors, who we call the Atlas experts, and who spent their Easter holidays uploading content. So thank you so much for doing this. It's very much appreciated. Yes, this deserves an applause. Yeah, and I mean, you can look at them yourselves. It's I was speechless when I found out who was able and willing to contribute. So we've got great people on board and also great fields of expertise that are already quite diverse. So we've got things from biophilic design, architecture repair, quantitative studies, interior gender, sexuality, bodies, curatorial practices, taste and trends, theory, generative AI, regenerative design, sustainable lighting design. It can go on forever. I think this is already, and this is the beginning, right? So it already gives you an idea of the scope of the project. So to summarize this, we created 5 facts. First is Atlas Archive is not for profit, which means anyone can access it for free. Second is Atlas Archive accommodates different learning needs. This is what you mentioned. We can have podcasts, videos, online articles, magazines, and we can allow this to happen or to be placed on the Atlas because we're only referencing it. It's not directly uploaded into the CMS system. It's only referenced through URL links. Atlas Archive is international, obviously, which also means we had a question and going back and forth with the contributors of the Atlas project about language. What kind of language can the media actually be in? What could be relevant? And I thought to myself, oh, I am interested in languages, but I don't speak all European languages, so what do we do? And we agreed on this universal language of English on the website, so media will be presented in English, but are still very welcome to be uploaded in different languages in their respective language, so that we can review it by the Atlas artifact, let's say, that will be placed on the website in English and get an understanding of it, but so it can still be relevant to each country. Atlas Archive does not claim ownership over user-uploaded content, and this is really important. And this also, again, is connected to, first of all, it may be any language, and also it is only referenced, so that it's not actually on the archive, it is linked to the archive. And what's really important is that everybody contributing to the Atlas Archive and uploading their content holds their own rights to upload the material. Can be open source, can be their own work, or you need to require the rights to upload the content. And this is then, again, in line with each national regulation for copyrights. And this is mentioned on the process of uploading on the Submit Artifacts page. And the 5th one, Atlas Archive is ever growing, and today marks the beginning. Which means that it has been funded by the EU until this point, which also means that we're looking for sponsorship, and I've included the ECIA sponsorship requirements. So if anyone has any idea of how to sponsor this thing, we'd be really grateful. Just get in touch with the board members, because obviously we want this project to be growing and to continue and to be out there and scale it up. And so we need money.
We'd like to say that that's really important, because we've delivered it to this point, and now this is just the beginning of it. And for it to live and breathe and to carry on, it needs support. So please, think about that, because I think that there's opportunities here, there's sponsorship opportunities, there's all kinds of things that can happen with it. But anyway, I want to say a few things. I just want to say thank you to ECIA for giving us this opportunity and for trusting myself to deliver this, for the commission, coercion, press ganging, whichever way you want to view it really. But I've really enjoyed the journey. But it's a very proud moment to sort of deliver this to you. But also it's really proud for me. Miriam was one of our students at the RCA in interior design, and I'm really proud of her and the brilliant job that she's done with this. So I'd like to say thanks. And I'd like to say thank you lot. Thank you.
Yes. Do we have 5 minutes?
No.
No? Okay. Fair enough. So we'll skip forward. Get in touch, please.
Well, it's our break time. We can manage 5 more minutes as you start 5 minutes late, but would you like to could we use that for some questions?
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Yes,
Yeah.
of course. Yeah, of
Yeah.
course.
If we can try our throwing box. So, are there any questions? Anyone would like to ask? Yeah, super good. So,
Throw the box.
Yeah, I
I'll
don't-
sit down.
Watch out for your
I'm
I'm
coffee.
going to give it to you more or less.
Yeah,
so,
please, yeah.
so
Mhm.
super good. I think you need to talk into the. Yeah, is it turned on, Sarah? Yeah, it should be now. No. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. We'll use. I don't think.
Throw
we'll
it
have
back.
something. We'll go.
Good try.
Should I behold? All right.
Hang on. Where's Neil Harkness on the screen at this moment?
Neil,
him
can
back
you
on.
hear us? Maybe he's somewhere. He is on Zoom. Hello, Neil.
All right. So I think this is really incredible. But now it's like a platform for to obtain kind of knowledge. Do you think it would be possible to like evolve it into something like a platform to make connections with like us students, to make connection with people in the industry in different countries, and probably like have like forums for discussions and to comment on the research.
It's an interesting one, and I think it has potential for that in the future. At the moment, that's not its capacity, but I think it depends on the future now, because if somebody was to say, we would like to do that and therefore we will support it financially, that could be built into it. It's effectively a simple platform in many respects. It looks complicated, but it's effectively a simple platform that can grow and extend, but it's effectively a device to link people up with knowledge, subject matter, and so on. So if it were to become a forum, that's possible.
Mm-hmm. There is... let me just add, there is the opportunity, for example, to look up different study programs. We have a category for this. We also have the option for contact details. We just haven't gotten into filling them out yet, because this needs permission by everybody, who would agree to have their contact details on the platform, and also need more maintenance, right? Because once someone changes their email or changes the job, then we already have more of a different question going on. So
it needs funding for a librarian.
Yeah.
Effectively.
Yeah.
But for instance, the spider model, which effectively is a huge networking, communicating report, let's say, that could quite easily be put onto this, of course. It could be put whole, it could be broken down into pieces across this, which would facilitate some of the conversation about connecting up programs across Europe.
We're going a little bit into our break, but is there one more question before we say thanks to Miriam and Graham? Good. Then we'll stop. Fantastic. Thanks very much. A really good example of creativity.
Thank you.
We've got a 10-minute break now, so if we can manage to get back by 1:15, then we're back on time again. Okay, I think we'll try and get going again now so we don't go too far over time. We're running a wee bit late, so we're maybe 5 minutes behind time now. So if everybody could sit down, and everybody's really ignoring me. Okay. Could everyone try and sit down so we can start again? It's like trying to drive a herd of
Goes
cats.
to the end.
Okay, it looks like we're getting nearly ready here to start again. This is like, Graham and Carsten, can you sit down? It's like a class here. Martin, you sit down as well. Claudia, I can see you're still standing.
I stand. There. Okay.
Miriam? Okay, I think we're ready. Apart from the president, who's causing trouble at the back. No. Okay, well, so we start the session after the break with Marianne Depp from Switzerland, and you'll talk about growing the organization. Do you need more introduction than that?
No.
Good.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. And I might read my notes. It's easier for me in English. And hello, everyone. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy that Jeremy invited me to come. For myself, I will also use the term of interior architect. I'm trained as an interior architect. I have worked nearly 40 years as an interior architect, so for me this is my identity of myself. And a part of my own business, I was for decades also very much involved in Switzerland from the governmental part in education, on higher education, which included also the training of the education of interior architecture. And I was also involved in research founding, two different research founding organizations. So this is my approach to what we're doing here and what we're talking here. I'm not a researcher myself. I'm not a professor myself. I would like to situate a little bit this project BCSP in the history also of ECIA. I was myself in the board of ECIA from 13 to 19, so just before Sophie came into the board. During my time, we were also working on identity, what is ECIA and whatever. And we made some kind of preliminary work to what we are seeing now here. We were working on this spider model already then, because we thought it should be visible how the relation of the profession of interior architecture in the different countries in Europe is. At the end, we have two projects preliminary to this BCSP. One was the spider model, which I will show a few slides later. We had already seen a few. Maybe we have double slides. While working together in the charter, this is the second project we were working on, I once again realized how important it is to always look at the professional development from both worlds. There were maybe 10 years ago more two worlds. They get closer and closer. On one side, the professional world, and on the other side, the educational and the research world. But I'm sure the profession can only develop itself if we include both parts, not just the education and research and not just the profession. And we have to find the language together. This is not obvious. I was asked to lead this one sub-project, Growing the Network, from the board then in 21, when they were active then, the people who sent in this application. And for me, it was very important from the very beginning. I said, yes, I do it, but only if I have a very small team. I didn't want to coordinate the team. This was not the purpose. And anyway, we all do voluntary work by coordinating. So we were 3 people. It was Jeremy and Martin, our president, and myself. So communication on distances were very short, and so we could have a really, really lean organization. I show you a few slides from the European platform. Most people in here probably know ECIA. Nevertheless, I would like to remind you of the key points of the organization. First of all, because our work we did here is also based on a common value, what we are living in the organization, but also in our profession. ECI sees itself as a platform for qualified professions. There is common view of the profession of interior architect designs as a vital part of society. It was very important for us, for culture and economics. We are always very close to the economics as well. So we don't have a hierarchy in this. ECIA has now 20 organizations. I come back to this. ECIA was founded in 33 years ago by a few very committed professionals in Europe. It was a kind of splitter group from IFI. The aim of ECIA was from the very beginning on the quality of the profession. That means education has always been on the top issue of this ECIA. It's not something which showed up recently. On this map, we can see the white spots. We have now, there are above all the countries of the Western Balkans, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Montenegro, Kosovo, and Albania. Countries that still have an economic development step ahead. However, Greece and Portugal, we have heard this before, you can also identify it as a white spot here. 2 countries that have been key player in the EU for years, but don't have interior architects organization. Another blind spot are 2 Baltic countries, Latvia and Lithuania. And here you see the organization today. So I have to go a bit above. ECIA has 4 member categories. The project focused on the 2 above, the effective member and the observer member. Here, the activities of ECIA in the last 10 years, 20 years. Some are newer, like on the bottom on the right side, BSCP project we are talking about here. A long-term goal was defined from this General Assembly in Paris. You have heard this culture, shared value and of the profession. I just repeat it here. We have been talking about different culture, shared value on one profession. How can this be visible? So we started already in 2017 to find a way how we can make visible that we are different. And this is when all these spider models started. It was a board decision. We had at this time we had 8 criteria. We were maybe a bit more focused on the profession. On this first map, I can show you quickly through. I don't stay too long on it. This is Estonia. Was Estonia then? And we were really happy when we have seen these pictures. It was just a a goal to achieve, to see the huge difference between the countries. They have still big difference now. But we knew, even being very happy with all these nice pictures, we knew that this wouldn't this wouldn't hold for or stand up to a scientific proof or scientific check of what we have done. We have just talked to the people, and it wasn't a statistic base behind it. And it was on the General Assembly 2018. We had then 25 years of ECIA, and we were proud to show around this work. And on the basis of this pre-work, this study we have heard this morning was done. Here, this is the EU co-founded project. We have already heard from Sophie this morning. Also, the project aim is clear. Building on connection for a strong profession, professionalize the ECIA. So now we go a bit back to this organization of ECIA. And here I can show you this 6 work package Sophie has also told about. It was clearly defined what it has to be done. So when I have heard the first time, I kind of knew what I have to do. I can quickly show all the 6, and after this morning you will have an overview of these projects. My responsibility was this, or our responsibility was this project number 2, growing the network, together with Martin and Jeremy. The objective, as I said, the objectives were defined when they signed in this whole project. They had to define where we go, where we have to achieve. So the objective of this work package 2 were clear, described, incentive EU member states to establish their first national Interior Architects Association.